try to remember the story myself. I realize I need some help, so I'm going to call in the original. I'm just a cheap copy of the real. What?
Hello. I have a wonderful son. And he wants you to avail yourself of something that he feels is very special. Okay, so the website started. The window has to be open.
Open the window.
No, I'm asking for it has to be open.
Yes, you're cold.
Boy, sit down. The website started, and it's very emotional for me to talk about the on the website. Because I was actually in the hospital with her all week and happened. I'll tell you all about it later. By her purpose, I happened to be in the hospital. And just bring me back. It's 36 years, and yet I feel like it was yesterday or today. There's no way that day, that whole, could be erased from my heart, from my soul, from my mind, because it was so shocking. It was so unexpected. So if I'm a little emotional, you'll just understand. But before I talk about what happened at the end, I want to talk a little bit about the beginning of my relationship with her, because I really feel that since so few people knew her, I want you to develop an understanding of the personality that she was. Although I cannot say that I'm a judge of her personality. I can just tell you what I witnessed, and you can extrapolate on your own to realize. I met the Rebbetzin when I was about 14 years old for the first time. And the reason that I had this relationship with her is because my father, Hashem, was very close to her all the way back from Russia. The families were very close. Actually, his mother and her grandmother, Rebbetzin Sternberg, were girlfriends. They were friends at a young age. So the family knew my father very well. When Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka was sitting shiva for her mother, the Friedrich Rebbe's wife, she told me that she remembered my father being a 1-year-old baby that she played with, and she remembered when he said his first word. She remembered when he took his first step. So she knew my father so well all the way as a child. She was 11 years older than him, and like 12, 13-year-old girls liked to play with babies, and she played with him as a playmate, or like people like to play with babies. So she had a very special relationship with him. So it made sense that in America they continued this relationship. It was a relationship really as a chassid. She always called him, she never called him by his first name. I always wondered, she's so close to him, she always called him Rabbi Gurari. His last name was Gurari. She had a very strong Russian accent. Rabbi Gurari. And of course he always called her the Rebbetzin, although she knew him since he was a baby, but it was just that kind of relationship. And because my father talked to her a lot about his family, and I'm a one and only daughter, I have 2 brothers, but I'm one and only daughter. It's a special status when you have only a single daughter. I mean, one. And she heard so much about me that she wanted to get to know me, and she wanted to know more about me. And I got involved, and then I got involved in helping her, because my father did a lot to help her, and I helped my father, so I got involved. But I want to describe something about her personality. I want to explain to you that we're talking about a lady that was the wife of the Rebbe, but she was the daughter of the previous Rebbe, right? Which made her the granddaughter of the Rebbe Rashab, which made her the great-granddaughter of the Rebbe Marash, which made her the great-great-granddaughter of the Tzemach Tzedek. She was, all the way till the Alter Rebbe, she was a direct grandchild. And the Rebbe told us about this in the beginning of the Shiva. The Rebbe asked for everybody to start funds or institutions on her name, schools, and and all kinds of libraries and mikvahs were made on her name, Ilu Nishmasa. And the first thing that was started was a fund, Gemilas Chesed Fund, and it was called Keren Chomesh, Ches Mem Shin, Chaya, Mushka, Shnei. And the Rebbe spoke a special sikha to say how come he let the shin of Shnei in the name Chomesh, because usually you don't use a Shem HaMishpachti, a family name, like a place is called Ole Menachem or Beis Rivka. You don't call the last name. Because last names change. Last names are not neshama names. They're names that could change. And the Rebbe said, but in her case, Shnei is her neshama name because she's a direct descendant of the Alter Rebbe of Shnei Zam of Varadi, that the whole Shnei name comes from there. So because she's a direct descendant, the Rebbe let the shin of Shnei in the name of the institutions because it's like a neshama name. Just like it's Chaya, Mushka, the Shnei is part of it. I remember hearing that and thinking, yes, the Rebbetzin was such a great person, and she had all this, all the generations part of her DNA. So the Rebbetzin knew exactly who she was. She knew that she's a very important person. She knew that she has all this lineage, yet she decided, it seems, she never spoke about it, she decided that her goal in life is to help the Rebbe to accomplish what his goal in life is, to prepare this world for Mashiach. So she would give up anything that she needs for herself. She deferred to the Rebbe because she doesn't want the Rebbe anyway to be hindered because of something of her. She completely gave herself over to the Rebbe and thereby to Chassidim. I'll give you a few examples just to show you how she did not want in any way to interfere with the Rebbe in any way. Here, her seats over here. I'm not going to go into chronology. I'm just going to talk about the stories, and I can go back and forth. There's a story that happened pretty late in life that actually I want to just explain that my father, Al Bashal, had a very big relationship with doctors, and he was very, very smart man, so he knew a lot of medicine through the doctors. And the Rebbe knew this, and the Rebbe once called him for Yechidus and told him that if my wife ever has medical problems, I want you to be in charge of it. So the Rebbetzin knew that my father's going to be the one if she has any problem. She one day told my father she has a problem with her eye, something's bothering her terribly with her eye, and my father was looking for the best doctor, the biggest doctor in New York. That could just take her to any doctor. He had in Manhattan a big specialist that was a very good friend of him, and whenever he wanted information of who's a good referral, this doctor would tell him who's the best heart doctor, who's the best lung doctor, whatever it was, he gave referred. So my father called him up, and he told him the name of the best ophthalmologist in New York. My father called up for an appointment, and they said there are no appointments for 6 months. This doctor is very busy. The patients are coming from all over the world. 6 months. My father's not going to wait 6 months. The Rebbe said has a problem with the eye, you can't wait 6 months. So my father decided he's going to go to the doctor, and he's going to speak to him personally, not to the secretary, not to the receptionist. He takes his car, goes to Manhattan, comes into the office, and he tells the receptionist, I have to speak to the doctor, just for a minute. She says, you can't go speak to him. He's busy. It was the end of the day. He's writing notes about the patients. My father said, just 1 minute. That's all I needed, just 1 minute. And she said, I can't do that. So he just went on his own. People who knew my father understand that my father, if it has to be for the Rebbetzin, he'll do anything. He walks in, and the doctor looks at a man with a white beard, walks in, barging in. The doctor looks at him. He says, Doctor, I need you to give me an appointment for the most important woman in all of New York. The doctor looks at him. How does he know who's the most important woman in all of New York? Probably would think that the mayor's wife or the governor's wife, what would he have a relationship with that? So the doctor said, exactly who's the most important woman? He said, the wife of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The doctor happened to be a Jewish doctor. He knew of the Rebbe. And he said, what's the problem? So my father explained. And my father said, you must see it tomorrow morning. This doctor was so shocked at my father's audacity. He said, okay, bring her at 9 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, they come to the doctor the next day. The doctor examines her, and he sees that she has to go through a procedure to correct the problem. And he said, there are 2 different ways of doing it. 2 different methods. I can choose for you which method, because each method has a risk of, some kind of risk. So you choose on your own one of the 2 methods I'm going to explain to you. when you come tomorrow to the hospital, you tell me which method you want me to do. She thanked him very much, and they leave. In the car going back, my father says, look, Rebbetzin, let's ask the Rebbe which method to do. Oh, chas v'sholem, I don't want my husband to worry about me. I don't want him to know I have a problem. So my father said, but Rebbetzin, the whole world comes to your husband whenever they have a medical problem, and he gives the best advice, and everybody listens to his advice. So she says, but I don't want him to worry about me. So my father says, so how are we going to know which are the two different procedures? So she tells him, whatever you say. My father said, I never do anything on my own without asking the Rebbe. How could I possibly decide for you? She said, I trust you. Whatever you say, I'm going to do. And my father said, but I'm not going to do it on my own because I can't trust myself. And she did want that the Rebbe should know that she has a problem. My father came home. My father lived next door, so I was there very often. And I was in the house when he came home because I wanted to hear what the doctor said. And he couldn't talk. He was like numb. And he comes in, and he's sitting by the table, and I talk to him, and he just can't even talk. And I said, what happened? And he can't talk, like he was like sort of in shock. What is he going to do? How is he going to help her? And then at one point, he gets up, he goes to the closet, he puts on his kapata, his frock, puts on his hat, puts on a gartel, because that's the way a chassid writes to the Rebbe. He sat down to write a letter to the Rebbe. He later told me that he wrote to the Rebbe, but he doesn't know what to do. The Rebbetzin doesn't want him to know, but he cannot make a decision on his own. He doesn't know. The Rebbe should tell him what he should do. The Rebbe answered him in 2 minutes that he doesn't have to know that I'm giving you advice. You write to me one of the 2 different options. I'll tell you what to do, and she doesn't have to know. And so my father described both different procedures. The Rebbe chose one, and the Rebbe said it's going to be successful, and she doesn't have to know that the Rebbe chose it. My father called her up, and he said, I decided you should do this and this. And she said, thank you. I knew that you were going to come up with a good idea. And my father couldn't say it was really the Rebbe, because the Rebbe said she doesn't have to know. And they went the next day, and the procedure went very smoothly. There were no problems. It went beautifully, and she was so happy. And she never knew, at least unless the Rebbe at some point told her, but she never discussed that the Rebbe really knew about it. She just was thankful for my father. There was another story that happened when in 1983, she fell and she broke her hip. Now, most people, when they break their hip, they go through hip replacement surgery, and within a few days they're fine. The Rebbetzin, for some reason, was not able to have surgery. She had other problems. And the doctor said it's going to take about 2 years until she heals, because you can't put a cast on a hip. And if there's no surgery, it's going to take very long to heal. And the doctor said it'll be terribly painful, but there's nothing we can do. It happened on Tisha B'Av, and the Rebbe asked my father to be in the hospital to make sure when the doctors are coming with different ideas of different medications to help him for the pain, he should be in the hospital. I was there too, to help my father, and I never went into the Rebbetz's room because the Rebbetzin always looked like a queen when she was dressed, and I knew she's laying in bed in pain, she's not going to look good, and she's not going to be happy that I see her that way. So I never went into her room, and everything I did was behind the scenes. A whole day we were busy with the doctors and nurses coming in with different ideas how to help her. And it's getting to be late, the end of Tisha B'Av, and we're in Manhattan and we don't have any food. So we called here to New York, to home, and somebody should bring us food. We didn't feel we could even leave the Rebbetzin. It was like unfinished business, so to speak. There was a visiting room that we were sitting there, my father and I, and 2 people that used to help the Rebbetzin in the house. They were like butlers that helped the Rebbetzin. They were also sitting there. And we took that visiting room for our own, and there was a phone booth right outside, so that was we took over. Suddenly, at about 10 o'clock at night, after we finished, we broke the fast. The fast is over like 9:30 Tisha B'Av, maybe 9:45, we get a phone call that the Rebbe is coming to the hospital to visit her. I was so excited, because I never saw the Rebbe anywhere except in 770, at the Oil, or to his home. He's going to come to the hospital. I was like, so I decided that I want the Rebbetzin to know that her husband is coming to visit. So I went to the room, I called out the nurse. I said, please come back. I whispered, I knew it was Rebbetzin to hear my voice. And I said, please tell her that her husband is coming to visit. So she said, okay, I'll tell her. I went back to the visiting room. She comes out 5 minutes later, and she's crying. She has tears coming down. I figured something happened. I said, what happened? She said, I'm not crying because something happened. I can't get over this patient that she said she heard her husband's coming. Please dress me up. I should look good. Put some makeup on me because I think I must be very pale and I don't want my husband to see me suffering. So please get some makeup to put on my cheeks and dress me up and I should look pretty because he should not see that I'm suffering. We had brought from the house a night jacket. It was something the woman wore on top of her nightgown that she should look more dressed. And she wasn't able to put it on because to lift her arm to put into a jacket would hurt her hip. So she couldn't put it on. But when she heard that I was coming, she told the nurse, please put on the night jacket. The nurse said, you can't do that. It's going to be so painful. She said, doesn't matter. I want to look very beautiful for my husband because I don't want him to see that I'm suffering. So the nurse was crying. She said to me, I never saw a patient that usually when they get visitors, they cry to the visitors, I'm in so much pain. It's so hard for me. And here she was looking at charade that she should look beautiful and rested, as if she's in a spa or somewhere, that the Rebbe should not feel that she's suffering. The Rebbe knew very well she was suffering, but that she wanted to show as if everything is fine and she doesn't have any pain. I'll tell you another story that happened when she came home from the hospital a few days later, because they couldn't do anything for her. The Rebbe instructed that she should have nurses around the clock, and I was in charge of that. So I called a nursing agency, and I had them come to my house so I could vet them to make sure they know how to treat the Rebbetzin, how they'll treat the Rebbe with their Chaya, you know. And I vetted, I saw who looked to be a little bit nicer, that have a little bit more, compassion. And I chose the nurses, and I warned them that they could never, ever miss a shift. Every 12 hours they change the shift. They have to be on time. If they ever feel that they can, they must get a substitute. They can't leave her alone because there's no one to take care of her. And for a whole year, it was perfect. There was never a glitch. The nurses came. The Rebbetzin was so happy with the nurses. Everything was fine. It was probably a year and a half after she came home from the hospital. On a Sunday evening, I'm telling you Sunday because Sunday, everything's closed. People don't work on Sunday. And the nursing agency was closed. I get a phone call. Rebbetzin is on the phone. And I had not spoken to her since she broke her hip because I knew she's in pain. I didn't want to bother her. So I didn't even speak. I was so shocked she's on the phone. I said, oh, Rebbetzin, what is it? She said, I'm so sorry. I have to ask something of you. It's very difficult. And it's so against my nature. I would never bother you. I know you're busy with your children. I would never bother you, but I have no choice. I said, Rebbetzin, what is it? You see, I have to ask you to do something that's impossible. But I have no choice. And what is it, Rebbetzin? I'll do anything. She says, the nurse that was supposed to come at 8 o'clock didn't show up. For my part, I could really manage. I have a walker. I'll be able to manage on my own. But my husband, she always spoke about the Rebbe, said my husband. She never said the Rebbe. It's interesting. She always said, my man, in Yiddish. She said, my husband refuses to go to 770 if there's no nurse. He doesn't want to leave me alone. So I really can manage on my own, but I cannot take it that the Rebbe is not going to 770 where he belongs because of me. So I'm asking you, maybe you could find a nurse. I know it's almost impossible. It's Sunday. Whoever's not working, they're probably out, went to a movie, whatever. It was the day before cell phones. So if she's not home, a nurse, how are you going to reach her? If they're home, if they won't be home. So she says, I understand it's very difficult, but maybe you could find a nurse. I said, I just had a good try. I have no idea. So she said, thank you so much. I called the nursing agency. And there's an answering service. I'm going to have an emergency. What's the emergency? I said, my patient is very, very weak. And the nurse didn't show up. And we need another nurse. And it's your fault. You're the agency. The nurse didn't show up. You have to get me another nurse. They said, on Sunday? Where are we going to get a nurse on Sunday? I said, I don't know, but it's your fault. And she's very weak and there's no one to take care of her. So you must get me a nurse. So they said, we'll see. They don't know if they'll reach anybody. I remember sitting by the phone. 15 minutes. It was like 15 years. I know the ambulance is waiting. It's like 15 years. I'm not hearing back. And then suddenly, I get a call from the agency. There's nobody home except one nurse was home. But she doesn't want to come because she lives so far. So I said, tell me, if we send a limousine for her, would she come? So they said, you want to send a limousine? I said, maybe she'll be excited to go to a limousine and she'll agree to come. They said they'll call her back. They called her up. And she was so excited she's going to ride in a limousine that she agreed to come. So we sent the limousine. It cost $100, but at least the Rebbetzin will have the nurse and the Rebbe go to something. I keep thinking about it. The Rebbe had on the second floor a beautiful a library, a big room full of svarim. The Rebbe could have sat there a whole night and learned and write letters. What would be terrible if he doesn't go to 770? But the Rebbetzin could not take it, that because of her, he's going to be home and he's not going to be with Hasidim. So she went to do something against her nature, just so that the Rebbe could go to 770. She knew the Rebbe belongs with the Hasidim. We all know that in the case with the Sternberg, the lawyers asked the Rebbetzin, who do you think the books belong to? And she said so without thinking. Of course the Hasidim, because my father belonged to the Hasidim. She understood a Rebbe and Hasidim is one. There's no such a thing that sometimes he's with the Hasidim, sometimes he's with his wife. The Rebbe and Hasidim is one. And this is what she knew, and this is what she felt, and this is what she was willing to give everything up for. You know, the beginning of the Messias, the Rebbe used to have Yechidus every Sunday night, every Tuesday night, and every Thursday night. And it started at 8 o'clock, and it would go on, sometimes till 12, sometimes till 1. And I don't know how much you learned about what went on by Yechidus, but the Rebbe very often, a person was given a certain amount of time, like 2 or 3 minutes. But sometimes the Rebbe wants to use out the person for something that he could accomplish if he was involved in a synagogue, if he was involved in a school, whatever it was. And sometimes the Rebbe would have discussions with these people for a very long time. The secretary would come in to tell the person, your time is up, and the Rebbe would say, leave him, because the Rebbe wanted to accomplish something through this person. And very often the Rebbe spoke for a very long time to these people. So the Yechidus went on and on and on, and went up to 2 o'clock and to 3 o'clock. There were times that the Rebbe didn't even go home a whole day. And by the time Yechidus was over, it was Shacharis. So that's how long the Yechidus sometimes took. My father would tell me, he used to tell the Rebbetzin, it must be very hard for you to be alone in the house. I think that if you would tell the Rebbe that it's so hard for you to be home alone, he would stop at, let's say, at 1 o'clock, and he would come home so you shouldn't be alone. And she said, I should tell the Rebbe what to do? I will never do that. And my father begged her. He said, it's so hard for you to be alone. Aren't you frightened sometimes? And she didn't even think about that. She was not going to tell the Rebbe to do something different because of her. The Rebbetzin knew her station, and she knew that wherever she would go, people would give her so much cover. People would give her so much adulation, and she didn't want that. She was very private and very modest. There's a story that there was a store on the street on Rogers Avenue that sold very special cakes, like small cakes that you serve when you have a reception at your house. You have guests, very small, they're called petit fours, very, very beautifully decorated. And she used to go to the store to buy it when she would have company. She used to set a very beautiful table. One time, and she used to stand online like everybody. They didn't know who she was. She would pay with cash. She didn't have a check, and she didn't give a credit card, so they didn't know who she was. And one day, a chassid walked into the store and saw the Rebbetzin standing. So he goes over to the owner and he says, excuse me, you know who that lady is? It's the Rebbetzin Rebbe's wife. She should not be standing online. He said, oh, I don't know who she was. So he goes over to her and says, please tell me what you need and I'll give it to you. She says, no, don't treat me differently. Excuse me, you're the Rebbetzin Rebbe, you should not be standing online. So please don't treat me differently. And she refused to tell him what she wants because she didn't want to be treated differently. The man was so upset that he kept going over to her because it was a long line, and sometimes people say, I want this, no, not that, give me that, sometimes. And he felt so bad that she's standing on her feet because people are taking their time. And he kept going over to her, please tell me what you want, I'll give it to you in a minute. She said, I don't want you to treat me differently. And you know what? She never went back to that store because she knew the guy knows her and he's going to treat her differently, and she refuses to get that covered. We're told that once, I don't know if you know this, that the Rebbetzin, after the Rebbe was sick in Tavshalat Ches, they used to go for Shabbos to the library that's attached to 770, and they had a little apartment there for Shabbos, so the Rebbe should not have to walk home to his house. And the Rebbetzin would leave, Moshe Shabbos, the Rebbe would be in 770, she would go home herself. The Rebbetzin drove a car, she was very self-sufficient, but she was also very shy. And Bachram used to stare at her because they were just amazed that this is a Rebbetzin, we want to watch her, want to watch her drive the car, whatever they wanted. And she once was so self-conscious that they're watching her that she tripped and she fell. Because she was so shy, she didn't want all this, she didn't want people to watch her and And she wanted to be private, alone. She is her own person. She doesn't want all the covered. I want to tell you how she had sympathy for people. I don't mean sympathy, empathy. She understood that anybody coming to her house is going to be very nervous. They're in the Rebbe's house. And she didn't want that if she had guests. She wanted to make them comfortable. So my first children are girls. Before I had boys, I had girls. And they got married, each one a year apart from each other. That's how they were born. That's how they got married. And my father would arrange that they would go to the Rebbetzin for a bracha before the wedding. The chazan Chaya and my husband and I. Every time he asked for an appointment, she would give an appointment like in 2 weeks. You could imagine why she couldn't say, come Thursday, come 2 days, 3 days. Why 2 weeks? And then I figured it out. It took a while to figure it out. She used to do research on who is the chazan, because my girls knew her. So the girls are going to be comfortable because they know her. But she knew that any chazan coming to the Rebbe's house is going to shake. He's in the Rebbe's house. So she wanted to put him at ease. So she wanted to find out who he is, what's his family. Maybe she knows someone in the family, so she wanted to talk to him about. And she did research, and she found out, in each one she found out exactly this one. She knew the grandfather from Russia, this one, whatever it was. So when we came in, the table was set, a beautiful table, and she sat everybody down, and she started to talk to the chazan. She didn't talk to me, she didn't talk to my husband, she didn't talk to the kala, she spoke to the chazan. And she said, oh, I heard your grandfather, your ancestors come from Russia. I also come from Russia. She would have a whole discussion. And when she saw that the boy was calming down, and he was able to talk to him without stuttering and without being nervous, she saw he's okay. Then she started talking to us. And she asked the kind of questions. But always she started with the chassid because she didn't want him to be uncomfortable. I remember thinking that that's such a beautiful thing of her, that she wanted the people to come and feel comfortable, but she knew that you come into his house, you're going to be uncomfortable. It has to be that my fourth daughter was getting married after she broke her hip, and she was in pain for a long time, and my father said he can't ask her for an appointment because he doesn't want to bother her. And I said, but it's so not fair. All the girls did it, and why this fourth daughter should not have it? He says, you know what, you call her up. I said, I feel so bad to call her up. So he said, you call her up. And I said, I decided to call her up and tell her, I don't want a reception. I'm coming for 2 minutes. You should give the chazan Chaya bracha. So I called her up and I said, Rebbetzin, I know it's very hard for you, and I would never do this, but I feel bad that the fourth daughter should feel different from the others. And I know that it's hard, so we're not going to take your time. We're coming for 2 minutes. I don't want you to set a table. We're not going to sit down. We just want 2 minutes. You should give a bracha. She said, no problem, and she gives me a date. We came in, and the table was set so beautifully with fruit and cake and drinks. I was very upset. So I said right away, Rebbetzin, I made up with you 2 minutes. She says, it's okay. And again, she spoke to the chassid, and she spoke to us. And every few minutes I said, Rebbetzin, I promise you 2 minutes. Please, just give a bracha. She said, no, I want to speak more. And every time I stopped her, she kept on continuing. I was sitting here, and she was sitting here. And at one time I said, Rebbetzin, please, I want just a bracha. I don't want to take your time. And she gave me a look that was so, I can't describe it, like a smile as if to say, it's okay. And I was so touched by it that I took her hand and I kissed her. I don't know why I did that. I don't know if anybody ever kissed an Rebbetzin, but I just was so overcome with emotion that she was so warm. She wanted to enjoy talking to the chazan Chaya. There's a very interesting story about a certain man that I happen to know. He lives in Florida. This is a long time ago, but he had a garden in the back of his house he was very excited about. He used to get earth from Spain, from different places, for the certain kind of exotic fruits that grow in these different places. And he had a gardener especially bringing the different soil for the different fruits, all these exotic fruits. He was very busy with his garden. And he used to come for dollars from Florida, and the Rebbe always gave a $2 for your garden. It was like a joke with the Rebbe, for your garden. One year, he's coming to New York just before Purim. Not on Purim, but before. He decided he's going to bring some of these fruits for the Rebbe as Shalach Manos. So he puts in a basket all these different fruits, and he goes to the house, and he rings the bell. And a lady answers the door, and he said, this is a basket of fruit from Dr. Schuster for the Rebbe and his wife. So the lady tells her to put him down on a table in the hallway, and she goes to bring him a tip. She comes back with a tip. And he said, oh, excuse me, I'm not a messenger. I'm Dr. Schuster myself. So she said, if you're Dr. Schuster, maybe you want to come in. He said, well, who are you? She said, I'm the housekeeper. So he comes in. A housekeeper, and he starts to ask him what, things about his family, and he said, I have a very big request. I want you to tell the Rebbe and his wife that I live in Florida in a very beautiful home that's surrounded by a lot of trees. It's completely discreet. Nobody knows who's behind these trees. Nobody sees my house. It's almost like a gate, but it's a gate of trees. And if the Rebbe would want to come for vacation, as if the Rebbe would ever come for vacation. But this is what he said. I would love to give my house. I'll get my maids to take care. Could you please tell the Rebbe's wife that I'm extending this invitation? He said, I'll tell them. And he said, this would be my greatest honor if they would come to my house. They would have the most wonderful, it's so warm in Florida, and they would be so comfortable, and nobody would know they're there, so it could be very private. And she said, I'll give over the message. And he said, please, this is my fervent wish. Anyway, he asked her a few questions about the house, different things that he saw, and then he got up to leave. And he said, thank you so much for letting me into the house. And she wished him happy Purim, whatever, which is going to be the next day. He walks out of the house. He told me the story. He said, I was whistling to myself because I was so excited. Where did they get such a lovely woman to be the housekeeper? Such a special woman. So he stops the first person he meets on the President Street. He was a husband that lives across the street from the Rebbe. And he said, honey, where did they get such a lovely housekeeper to the Rebbe? Usually housekeepers are, most people not even Jewish. This lady looks like such a special woman. So he says, housekeeper? What did she look like? He said, well, she was very petite, but she had a strong Russian accent with a perfect English. Where did they get this woman? He says, you're describing the Rebbetzin. So he says, but she said she's a housekeeper. He says, well, she keeps the Rebbe's house. She was alive. He keeps the Rebbe's house. But she knew that if she says she's a Rebbetzin, the guy's going to be so frightened, he's not going to walk in. He's going to, what would happen for a man that doesn't expect to be in the Rebbe's house, and he's suddenly there. And she understood that. So she decided to say she's a housekeeper. She didn't lie. She kept the Rebbe's house. I want to tell you about the Rebbetzins' care for Hasidus. I'll tell you a very interesting story. I'm sure you've heard, I hope you've heard, that the Rebbe instituted in 1941, he instituted something called the Sefer Torah for Yaldei Yisrael, for children of Tzivos Hashem. And every child in the world was able to buy a letter for $1 that they should all be together combined in this part of the Sefer Torah. At this point, we're up to the 9th Sefer Torah, because as soon as there are 304,805 letters, you have to make a new Sefer Torah. But the first Sefer Torah that Rebbe spoke about with so much excitement that children all over the world are going to be united with the Sefer Torah. My father, Baruch Hashem, had an idea that he wants to make a gold crown for the Sefer Torah. The Rebbe is so excited about the Sefer Torah, he wants to make a gold crown. So we asked the Rebbe, would the Rebbe accept a gold crown? And the Rebbe said yes, and I'll tell you the style of the crown. Wait for instructions. 2 days later, Rabbi Chodaka, the Rebbe's secretary, called us that we should pick up a big package. And I went to pick it up because I drive a car. I took my husband. And inside was the crown of Mashiach Sefer Torah. Are you familiar with which is Mashiach Sefer Torah? Yeah. That crown the Rebbe bought was the first crown in 770. That crown the Rebbe bought for Mashiach Sefer Torah. And the Rebbe wanted the crown for the children's Sefer Torah to be the same style. So the Rebbe said it should be this style, that the company that's making it should make a mold of exactly of this Sefer Torah crown. Anyway, this crown was finished, but the Sefer Torah was not yet finished. So we took the crown to a vault. It should not be in the house. It cost a fortune of money. It should be in a vault. It should be safe. And knowing that whenever the Sefer Torah will be ready for a siyum, the crown will go along. It was going to be in Eretz Yisrael. The crown was going to go to Eretz Yisrael. That year, I was expecting a baby just on the 17th day of Av, and we found out that the siyum of the Sefer Torah is going to take place on the 20th day of Av, which is the Rebbe's father's yahrzeit. And okay, it's going to be interesting. But my father and mother were that time in Europe for a summer vacation, and they were going to come home to be with me when I had the baby because I was going to have an operation, and I'm a one and only daughter, they wanted to be with me. Suddenly I get a phone call from my Hanukkah that the heaven wants my father to bring the crown to Eretz Yisrael. He should be the shliach. So I call my father to Europe, and I tell him we're going to send the crown to you, and you'll take it from Europe to Eretz Yisrael, because I said you should be the shliach. He said, but I have to be with you when you have the baby. I said, listen, the heaven wants you to go to Eretz Yisrael, you can't be with me. But he was so upset that he's not going to be with me, that he must have told the Rebbetzin that it's so hard for him to listen to the Rebbe. He's of course going to go, but he must have told her a lot, because he spoke to her every day. I don't know. I just know that my father went to Eretz Yisrael. He sent the crown. He took it to Eretz Yisrael. And I gave birth the morning of the day I was due, the 17th day of Av. It seems that somebody told the Rebbe that I had a baby, and she right away called at my house to find out who's in charge, who's taking care of the little children, what's going on. And she spoke to a daughter of mine, and she said, how are you managing? She said, everything's okay. Then she said, tell me, what are you giving the children for supper? She was so embarrassed because she planned to give the kids Franks. And Franks is not so nutritious, so she was embarrassed to tell the Rebbetzin, I'm giving them Franks. She's not giving a good supper. But she couldn't tell a lie. It's the Rebbetzin. She's not going to say a lie. So she says, well, I'm planning to give them hot dogs or whatever she said. The Rebbetzin said, oh, that's such a good idea. Those children like it, and they'll eat easily. They won't make trouble for you. It's such a good idea. My daughter felt so good. I don't know if the Rebbetzin thought it was a good idea, but she wanted to make my daughter feel good. Then she asked for my phone number, and she called me to the hospital. And she called me in the morning, and she called me in the afternoon. Every day she called me twice a day to ask how I am, and if the nurses are nice to me, and how the baby's doing, all kinds of questions. Like she felt she has to take care of me. On the third day, which was Chaf Av, in the evening, when she called me up to ask how I am, she asked me if I have a way to hear the Farbrengen tonight. I said, I happen to. You ever hear about a hookup? You know what a hookup is? And I had a number for a hookup so I could hear the Farbrengen at home, because I couldn't always go to 770 because I had little children. So I had a hookup at home. So I told her I happened to have a hookup number, and I could listen to the Farbrengen even here in the hospital. She says, oh, so let me suggest something. You take your baby into your bed and put the receiver between your ear and the baby's ear, that the baby should hear the Farbrengen. I remember being so shocked. I never knew if a baby could hear at 3 days old. And she said, it's important that even a newborn should hear Chassidus. I remember I was so dumbfounded, I couldn't even talk. I was so surprised that an infant should hear Farbrengen. Farbrengen is a chafa. The Rebbe used to make say 100. It was Medicine 100. It's such difficult. It's not like just a enjoyable Farbrengen. It's a difficult Farbrengen. And what could this baby understand? But she felt that even an infant has to hear Chassidus. I took that so to heart, and my daughter, Baruch Hashem, is a very successful shlucha, and I think basically it's that gave her a strong push that she became a very Chassidish woman, because of Chassidus she heard as a 3-day-old baby. I want to tell you something else about the Rebbetzin cared for people. You know, if you ask, what did she do a whole day? So I happen to know, my father told me this, she had like a circle of people that she was close to. And if she ever heard that somebody doesn't have a job, somebody, she doesn't even know them, but somebody told her there's a family, he just lost his job, he has a big family, the business went out of business, he was working. She would work with the people she knew to try to get a job for this person. She didn't even know him, but she heard that this person doesn't have parnasa and he has a family. So she worked with the people she knew and asked them, find out if somebody knows of a bookkeeper. Find out all these different things. She worked with her people. Now, of course, the Rebbetzin ask you, help me find a job for a bookkeeper. Everybody's going to work very hard because they want to satisfy the Rebbetzin. And when she heard that somebody found a job, she made that the person who needs the bookkeeper should call him up. Not that this person say, I call up, this person might have a job for you. She had the person who had the job call up this man who doesn't have a job to make him feel good that I heard you're a very good bookkeeper and I need you. This was going on behind the scenes. Nobody knew about this. If she heard people didn't have an apartment, they don't have where to live, something happened with the apartment, she would find out through her people, you could find me an apartment for a family with 5 children, whatever it was. And of course, everybody wanted to help her, and that's how she helped people secretly Nobody knew about it. She had very strong affinity to people that she was close with, and if they were suffering about anything, she couldn't take the people to suffer. So I'm going to tell you a story that happened 45 years ago. One evening, I happened to have gotten a brand new car because my other car had an accident, and I got insurance a brand new car. And the night after I got the car, something happened to me that 2 discs in my spine came out of place, and I became paralyzed. The discs of the spine were laying on the nerves, and they were compressing the nerves, and my leg was like a piece of stone. And I went to one of the biggest doctors, neurologist, and he told me, there's nothing you can do for it except time. With time, the disc will go back into place, and it won't be pressing on the nerves, but there's nothing we can do now. We can take you to the hospital, but we can't help you. We'll just keep you in the hospital. Better go home to your children. I had 8 children that day. Go home to your children. And with time, it's going to get better. And then the doctor said that as soon as you feel tingling in the toes, it's going to be annoying because it's going to bother you. But it's going to mean that the nerves are getting back. They're starting to rejuvenate. It's a good sign. Okay, I waited a month, 2 months, 3 months, nothing's happening. Finally, 4 months later, I start to feel my tiptoes, this tingling. I was so excited, it means I'm going to get better. I started calling up all my friends and my relatives. I'm going to get better. My nerves are going to start to rejuvenate. You'll see. I was so excited. My father comes to me, to my bedroom, and he said, Esther, they called from the dealer where you got the car that they want to know if you're happy with the car. I told them you can't drive because you're paralyzed on the right foot and you drive with the right foot. And they said, oh, that's terrible. The car has to be started. You can't let a car lay idle. It's very bad for the car. And she has to go start the car, and it should be she, the person who's going to drive, because everybody presses differently on the gas pedal. Those days you had to press on the gas and turn the key. Today you don't have to do that. It's different. But that time you have to press on the gas. And they said everybody presses differently, so she has to do it. My father said, I don't know if she could walk. He tells me, but you know what? Come with me. I'll help you. And if you can't do it, I'll do it. But maybe you can do it. I said, I can't do anything. He said, maybe you can do it. It took me a half hour to go from this side door to the back where the car was because I couldn't walk. I had to lean on to him. I only had the left foot. They didn't have walkers then. I don't know why. It would have been so much easier with a walker, but they didn't have walkers then. 45 years ago. So I get to the car, and I'm so nervous because he wants me to start the car, and I really didn't think I could do it. But I pressed with the tiptoes, and I started the car. I was so excited. I started the car. That means I'm doing something. I'm getting well. Every day I went to start the car because they said from the dealer that you must start the car every day. 3 weeks later, my father comes and said to me, they called back from the dealer. They're so happy you're starting the car. They want you to drive a little bit frontwards, a little bit backwards, forward and reverse, because there are gears that have to be oiled, and if you move it, the gears will be oiled. Otherwise, it's very bad for the car. My father said, you have to do it. I said, I can't do that. He said, try. Anyway, with my tiptoes, I was able to do it. I was on top of the world. It means I'm soon going to be well. I will be able to drive a car. And I called up everybody, all my friends. I'm getting better. I'm getting better. I'm so excited. Then 3 weeks later, they called back from the dealer that if I could do this and I could do that, maybe I could drive a little bit, just 5 miles an hour to get the car to move. It's very important for the car to move. I think I have to protect this new car. So I drove it back to the house. There's a place where you could drive. It was going 5 miles an hour. But I was on top of the world. I'm going to be well. I see I'm starting to drive. Anyway, I got better and better. Baruch Hashem, I'm all well. A year later, I'm sitting in my father's house, Chalamoid Pesach. My brother from Canada was here. And my brother said he wants to buy an American car instead of a Canadian car because something he thought was better. I said, oh, you must buy from my dealer. My dealer was so devoted to the car. If you buy from my dealer, you'll get a good deal. He'll be very devoted to the car. My father's sitting there and he said, Esther, you really think that was a dealer? I said, you told me it was a dealer, and I believe my father. He said, that was Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka. I said, what? He said, Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka felt so bad for you that you're so depressed that you're never going to get well. She wanted to give you some hope. So she concocted this whole story that I have to get the car started. Otherwise, something's going to happen to the car. I bet you nothing would happen to the car, but I really was afraid. And she kept telling my father what to tell me to force me into the car. So I should have this feeling, I'm going to get well, and in Mitzvah Hashem I'll be well. I should have hope. I shouldn't be so depressed. How much time do we have? I have just... Okay. I'm going to tell you something very interesting, just because it's interesting. The Rebbe was so devoted to the Rebbetzin that, for instance, he always made Havdalah for the Rebbetzin. No matter what he had to do, if he had to be back at 7:70, he went home, made Havdalah, and went back. He never missed making Havdalah. When the Rebbetzin was in the hospital, I told you, Tisha B'Av. So the very first night that the Rebbe came to visit was Wednesday night. And in the hospital, there were signs all over the place, no visitors after 8 o'clock. So I knew I had to get a permit, a special pass. I went down. There was a very nice guard by the table. I told him I need a pass for a very important rabbi. He gave me the pass in a second. Thursday night, again, I got a pass, no problem. Friday, the Rebbe came lunchtime, and it was no problem. I just arranged that the Rebbe should have a special elevator because all the elevators were squashed with a lot of people in the summer. I didn't feel the Rebbe should have to be squashed with all these people, so I got them to open up a service elevator. The Rebbe went himself, and he visited the Rebbe. I went back to the visiting room, and the other men that used to help in the house said, you know, you're going to have to be here Motzei Shabbos because the Rebbe's going to come to make Havdalah. And you better be here early because you're going to have to get a pass. I said, how am I going to get a pass? How am I going to get into the building? I'm coming from the street. How am I going to come? First 10 o'clock was time to come from Brooklyn. They said, well, figure it out, but you have to do it. So I went down, and I saw different people. There was a janitor. He looked like a very nice man. I think I'm going to ask him. I whispered, I'm going to have to come tomorrow night, come to the street about 10 o'clock. Could you tell me a way that I could sneak in because they're not going to let me in? He said, I'll tell you. Next door, there's another hospital that has an emergency room. If you go to the emergency room, go down to the basement, there's a tunnel that goes from that hospital to this hospital. So you'll go all the way to the basement of this hospital, and you'll take the elevator to the floor, the 7th floor, and you'll bypass the first floor where the guard is. Nobody's going to see that you're coming, because you're coming from the basement. So I was very thankful. And I figured, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I came home. I looked at what time is the earliest I could leave the house after Shabbos. And I remember planning to leave the second Shabbos is over because the Rebbe's coming. I have to get him the pass. I remember that I had to buy gasoline. I figured I have no time now. It's late. On the way back, I'll buy. So I looked for money. I'm telling you this for a reason. And I couldn't find any small money. I only found a $100 bill. So I took a $100 bill. And I go to the hospital, I go to the 7th floor, and I hear that she had a very good Shabbos, Baruch Hashem, and they say, quickly, go get a pass. The Rebbe should come here any minute. I go down, and to my shock, the guard on duty looks like the meanest person in the world. And I figured he looks so scary, he's not going to give me a pass. So I sweet talk him. I said, good evening, sir, make a big smile. And he doesn't smile back. What do you want? I said, sir, I need a pass for a very important person. I'm not giving no pass. I said, sir, you don't understand. This is a rabbi that's the greatest rabbi in all of New York. I don't care who he is. I'm not giving a pass. I said, sir, he's even greater than President Reagan, who's then the President of the United States. I don't care if it's President Reagan himself. I'm not giving a pass. I figured, what am I going to do? The guy's going to come and he doesn't have a pass. I remember I had $100. I think I'll take out the $100. I'll give him a bribe. I take out the $100. I said, give me the pass. You want to bribe me? You can't bribe me. I'm not giving you a pass. I burst out crying because what's going to be? I should take the Rebbe from a block away to go that whole way? I can't think of that. I was hysterical. So Hashem helped me. At that moment, I had this idea. Because of Mitzvah Neshek, if you know what Mitzvah Neshek is, I was putting in ads in the New York Times that the Rebbe wanted very much. We should have ads tell people what to do. And I'm used to this idea of putting an ad in the New York Times. So I tell this guard, who had his name, Mr. McKenzie. I said, okay, Mr. McKenzie, call out his name specially. Don't give me a pass, but I want to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a full-page ad in the New York Times saying that Mr. McKenzie did not let this rabbi visit his wife. And you know what's going to be? No Jew is going to want to go to this hospital because of you. And on Monday, you're going to be fired because of that. I don't know, I just made it up. You know what? He got so scared. And he said, okay, I'll give you the pass. You know what? He gave me the pass. I got the pass. I ran to the front door. The Rebbe was standing and waiting already. That's how long it took to get him to give me the pass. Anyway, the Rebbe took an elevator. I waited for a second elevator, not to go to the Rebbe, and I went up to the visiting room. And 2 minutes passed, and there's a fire in the hospital. The whole hospital was blaring a fire alarm. And then outside I hear fire engines. What happened? So somebody said to me, the Rebbe probably made Havdalah, and the smoke alarm fell to smoke. And the Rebbe made this whole hullabaloo in the hospital. And then the nurses are coming to close the door. They have a whole protocol. They close the door that if there's a flames, the flames should not spread. And then I hear in the hallway, this same bully, terrible guard is coming up to hear what's going on. I said, what's going on here? And I didn't want him to see me because I said the Rebbe is the greatest person in New York and the Rebbe made this whole thing. So I figured, let me hide. I went to the bathroom. He shouldn't see me. And maybe he's not going to figure out it's the Rebbe who did it. But just then the fire marshal came and he saw the rabbis and he said, oh, it's just a Saturday night ritual. So I'm telling you this story because the Rebbe knew that there are smoke alarms. And the Rebbe knew he was going to make Havdalah, and the smoke alarm can go off. It just has to take a minute. But the Rebbe was not going to change from what he does for the Rebbetzin, and he made Havdalah for her in the hospital. I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to tell you something very interesting. You know, the Rebbetzin, to me, this is the most telling of the Rebbetzin. The Rebbetzin passed away Chav Beis Shvat. But on the Chav Shvat, which was a Monday morning, the Rebbetzin felt some kind of a problem. She called her doctor. The doctor checked her out, and he said, I have to take you to the hospital for a certain test that they only do in the hospital. And she said, no, I don't want to go to the hospital. And he said, well, you cannot have this test anywhere else, and you must have this test. And she says, I don't want to go to the hospital. So he says to her, I'm going to have to ask the Rebbe, and ask the Rebbe what to do. She says, no. You cannot speak to him today, because tonight is going to be Yechidus for all the guests that came for Yud Shvat. For some reason, there was always Yechidus after a special Yom Paga. And for some reason, the Yud Shvat Yechidus was postponed till Chav Shvat. There never such a long wait. This year, there was, for whatever reason, it was so many days. And she knew there's Yechidus tonight. And she said, if my husband will be busy with me, he's going to cancel the Yechidus. And the Chassidim are waiting for this Yechidus. So you cannot speak to my husband tonight. And the doctor listened to her. I keep wondering why he listened to her. Now, I'm not saying that if she would have gone to the hospital, she would have lived longer, because we know that Hashem chooses when a person should pass away. But she was 87 years old. A month later, she turned 87. She knew that she's an old woman. She knew that she has a problem that has to be checked out in the hospital, but she could not take that because of her, the Chassidim will not have the Yechidus. So she did not let the doctor speak to the Rebbe, to sort of that the Rebbe would maybe force him to go to the hospital, because she did not want the Chassidim to lose the Yechidus that they waited for. I think, to me, this is the most telling of the Rebbetzin. She actually had Mesiras Nefesh at this age of her life, and she knew it was not a test like a strep throat. She knew it was something much more severe. This was Monday. On Tuesday, the Rebbe decided, she goes, we'll go to the hospital, let's bring specialists to the house, and if the specialists feel that she has to go to the hospital, then she'll go. And ultimately, Tuesday evening, she went to the hospital. She actually went on her own 2 feet. There was no emergency. Nobody thought something was imminent. And she went on her own 2 feet. Rabbi Krinsky, the secretary, drove her to the hospital. She didn't go with an ambulance. And she came to the hospital, and her room was not ready yet for some reason, because every room there in the hospital had for 2 people. And the doctors wanted to have a private room. So they had to take out 2 patients, and they had to sterilize. And she came to the hospital, the room was not ready. So she was sitting like in a hallway, a round hallway. And she was sitting in a wheelchair, and there's a floor doctor from the hospital asking her history. And at one point, she tells Rabbi Gansberg was like the butler in the house, she tells him she's very thirsty. Could you please get me some water? And he was very nervous. He didn't know where to get water because he was not in a room. But I was in the hospital a year ago, and I knew that every patient has near their bed they get a pitcher of cold water. And I had heard earlier that a friend of mine was in the hospital, so I visited my friend. I figured I'm going to go to my friend, I'll ask her for a cup of water, and I'll give it to the Rebbetzin. But there was a problem, because I knew that the Rebbetzin sees me at night. It was about 10:30, 11 o'clock. She's going to see me at night. She'll be very upset because she knew I had little children, and she never wanted to bother me. Whenever I said, can I do something for you? She said, you have little children, you're busy with your children, somebody else. And I figured if she sees me so late at night, she'll be very upset. I don't want her to be upset. So the hospital had pillars, wide pillars. That's how they built the hospital. So I'm standing behind the pillar. I took a cup of water from my friend, and I brought it, and I gave it to Rabbi Sternberg. And I said, Shalom, give it to the Rebbetzin. I whispered, she shouldn't hear my voice. He gave her the cup of water, and she said a bracha shahako very loudly. And then she drank the water. And she felt so good from the water because she was very thirsty. And she gave a very big bracha. She says, you are machaya me, like you brought me back to life. And Hashem should be machaya you, like you are machaya me. Now, I should have gotten that bracha, right? Because I gave the water. But I gave it to him. I was happy guy. And 2 minutes later, the doctor's measuring her blood pressure. And he sees it's very low. He says, are you still with us? And she answered very weakly, yes. And then he took it again, and it's falling. And something happened. And a minute later, she put her head back, and he screams, cardiac arrest. Now, nobody else was there except me. My father was there in the hospital, but he was sitting further away. My father didn't hear well. So he didn't hear the words cardiac arrest. He just saw she put her head back. He thought she was weak. The Dr. Feldman who would come with her went somewhere to make a phone call. There was nobody else except me. I'm the only person in the world that knows that she's a cardiac arrest. How am I supposed to take such a responsibility? So I realized Rabbi Krinsky brought her to the hospital, but he never came up. So maybe he's downstairs in his car. I need somebody who takes this responsibility. Who am I to take responsibility that the Lubavitcher Rebbetzin is a cardiac arrest? So I went down, and I saw he's in the car, he's doing secretarial work. I banged on the window. I said, Rabbi Krinsky, you know what they say? They say she's a cardiac arrest. He said, oh, don't worry, she'll pull through. But somehow I believed him. So he closed the ignition, comes up with me, and we saw Dr. Feldman with his head into the room where the doctors were doing everything to bring her back to life. And he told me they got back her pulse. Baruch Hashem. I was so happy they brought her back. A few minutes later, he said, uh-oh. I said, what's uh-oh? He said, they lost it again. I said, what do you mean they lost it again? I'm hysterical. A whole hour they worked on her. They did everything they can to bring her back. And every time they got her back a heartbeat, they lost it 2 minutes later. And at one point, the doctors walked out of the room, took off their gloves. It's over. I'll never forget the feeling I had that our Rebbetzin is not alive anymore. I couldn't think of the Rebbe without the Rebbetzin. I couldn't think of this tragedy that happened. I'm standing here, there's nobody else. Rabbi Krinsky was at the side. Then Dr. Feldman comes to me. He said, Esther, you're going to have to be a big girl. He said, what do you want from me? I was like, he said, you're going to have to go into the room, and you're going to have to be a shomer, because you're not allowed to leave a body alone. And it has to be a woman, it has to be a Jewish woman, so you're the only one here. I said, how could I do such a thing? He said, you have to be a big girl and do it. There's nobody else. So I remember my friend. I went to her my table. She was sleeping right now. It was like 12:30. And I knew there was a tillin by her bed. And I took a tillin. And I sat with the Rebbetzin for 2.5 hours till the Heber Kadisha came. Because nobody told the Heber Kadisha until they told the Heber. They didn't tell the Heber on the phone. They first went from the hospital to Brooklyn to tell him personally. So they didn't tell the Heber Kadisha. So it took 2.5 hours. I'll never forget. And then when they finally finished, we went back. We had a police escort. We came to the Rebbe's house. By that time, everybody heard about it. The street was full of men. The police had set up big lights, and like it was the middle of the day. And I was there with one of the women from Chaya Kadisha. We went on the porch next door to watch. The Rebbe came out of the house. They took out the Rebbetzin on a stretcher, and he walked behind her. The Rebbe's face, I'll never forget. It was worse than anything you saw at the funeral. The face following the Rebbetzins. And as soon as they went in the house, we were going to leave, this lady and I. And suddenly the door opens. Where are the ladies? Where are the ladies? Because she had to be taken off of the stretcher laid on the floor. You're supposed to put a body on the floor, on some grass, on some, not grass, what's it called? Like, what's it called? Hush. Hey, you're supposed to put a person. And they asked me to do it. And I said, but I don't belong to Chevra Kadisha. You're a woman. So I had the schus to lift up her head and her shoulders. The other woman took her and we lifted her off the stretcher and we laid her on the floor. And I was told to say what you have to say. You have to ask Mechila when you take care of a person passed away. You have to ask them for forgiveness in case you didn't treat them properly. You know, it took me so long to recover from this. That's why I'm telling you today is 36 years. It's like it's today. I don't feel any different today than I felt then. But I was just feeling that we did the most we could for the Rebbetzin. The Eibishter chose this moment for her to pass away, and we're going to just have to live with it until Mashiach comes. So, I hope that all of you got some inspiration about this great woman, and this great woman helped that we should have the Rebbe as much as we did. She never, you know, it says that Rabbi Akiva had a wife that let him go to learn for 12 years. She let him go away from home to learn for 12 years. You all know the story about Rabbi Akiva. When he came back, he heard his wife talking to a neighbor, and she said, if he would want to go for another 12 years, I wouldn't object. So he turned around and he went away for another 12 years. He came back after 24 years with 24,000 Talmidim. And when he saw his wife, he said, Sheli v'shelachem, all of you, Shelah, all of you are my Talmidim because of my wife. And I want to say that the Rebbe gave us so much, thanks to Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka, that she did not hinder him. She did not hold him back. She did not stop him, even though she was worried about his health after he had the heart attack, even though she was worried he was getting older and standing at the oil for so many hours and standing giving dollars for so many hours. She was very worried. She was a normal woman. She was a normal wife. But she knew he's a Rebbe, and he belongs to us, to the Hasidim. So we owe her that debt of gratitude that she let the Rebbe be with us as much that he was. And that's what this day should give us, the inspiration that we should honor her and do mitzvahs le'ilu nishmasa. Be well, everybody.